Hi everyone, Archmagos Fariston here. Strap yourself in for another 40k lore video. A few of you have requested that I do a video about the different warbands descended from the Thousand Sons. Now, the Thousand Sons have quite a number of warbands, and I didn't want this video to go for too long, so I'm going to cover the main ones which have interesting backstories. Alright, it's time to reveal some of the many secrets of the Thousand Sons. The first warband on our list is the Blades of Magnus. After the destruction of their homeworld Prospero at the hands of the Space Wolves, Sisters of Silence and Adeptus Custodes, the Blades of Magnus fled to the planet of the Sorcerers, and there they began to work in secret to break the bonds between their Primarch Magnus the Red and the Chaos God Siege. They worked in secret to break the bond between the Crimson King and the chaotic sorcery he had embraced. The Blades adopted the colours of Magnus's personal guard, the Rahati, but wore them in reverse. In this way they demonstrated their intent to save Magnus from himself. For many years they worked in secret, slaying those demons with which Magnus had made his devil's bargains. Despite working in secret for so many years, their hidden machinations were eventually discovered by the demon Primarch, who severely punished the Blades of Magnus. When Magnus learned of their works, he did not reward them, but blasted them with eldritch power, turning each legionary and sorcerer of this warband into soulless undead automatons, mere vessels for the Crimson King to control. Their stoicism in life has been replaced by the mechanical obedience of the Rubricae. Those who wish to harm Magnus will find squads of undying killers ready to open fire upon them. The Brothers of Retaliation is a warband led by the Chaos Lord, Lordran Thalarn. The warband was created after they left the planet of the Sorcerers 1,000 years after the death of Horus. It was raised for the sole purpose of seeking revenge against the Imperium of Man for the cruel fate inflicted upon the Thousand Sons Legion and their homeworld Prospero during the Horus Heresy. During the time of the Great Crusade, Lordran Thalarn was a powerful chaplain of the Thousand Sons, and at this time he was one of the few Astartes assigned to the position of chaplain, given that after the Emperor's decree restricting the use of psychers, the Space Marine legions were instructed to abolish their librarius divisions. Legions were no longer permitted to employ psychers in battle, nor were psychers in service to the Imperium allowed to continue their studies into the mysteries of their psychic talents. Lordran was handpicked and assigned the responsibility of a chaplain to ensure the spiritual well-being of the Thousand Sons Legion and enforce the ban on psychers. When the forces of the Imperium came to attack his homeworld at the start of the Horus Heresy, Lordran fought against the Space Wolves in defense of his home during the fall of Prospero. When the battle turned against them, Magnus transported Tizca, the City of Light, into the Eye of Terror, to a demon world that had already been prepared for its new occupants. Following this confrontation with the Space Wolves, Lordran reluctantly followed his Primarch into damnation, as Magnus eventually joined with the War Master Horus's cause, and the rest, as they say, is history. During his exile on Sortiarius, the so-called planet of the Sorcerers, Lordran's bitterness grew and grew. Magnus the Red, who he once adored, had changed into a foul mutation of chaos. Many of his brothers were also hideously mutated by the energies of the Warp and the Eye of Terror. Their once proud legion had degenerated into a rabble, who were forced to fight for their mere existence, raiding and pillaging. Lordran would never forgive nor forget the betrayal and humiliation that had befallen the once noble Thousand Sons. About 1,000 standard years later, after Horus's death, Thalarn fled the planet of Sorcerers, and hundreds of his loyal battle brothers followed him too. They conquered an ancient croneworld of the Eldar, and built a huge fortress called the Black Cathedral. Lordran's followers began to recruit thousands of hopeful disciples, and a few decades later a huge city had sprung up around the Black Cathedral. Lordran became a mighty Chaos Lord and renamed his followers the Brothers of Retaliation. Throughout the millennia, Lordran has drawn many different forces to his banner, including 2 demon princes, along with hundreds of Chaos Space Marines, thousands of cultists, renegades, and of course demons, all at his disposal as the Brotherhood of Retaliation's time of vengeance draws near. The Crystal Harbingers are another warband descended from the Thousand Sons Traitor Legion. The Sorcerers of the Crystal Harbingers delve into the hidden recesses of the Silver Towers to explore the Tzichian Labyrinth. Here they glean portents of the future and commune with demonic entities, which they then use to terrifying effect in their wars against the Imperium. What is a Silver Tower of Tzich, you may ask? Also known simply as a Silver Tower, this is a large demon engine dedicated to the service of Tzich, the Chaos God of Change and Deceit. Silver Towers are an outlandish sight on the battlefield, appearing as clusters of intricately carved towers resting upon a circular island topped with slender minarets of gold and bronze. Each silver tower is subtly different, yet all are disturbingly beautiful, with fine yet strange magically powered weapons studding forth from their walls. The most disturbing aspect of the silver towers, however, is that they are not landlocked vehicles, but drift gently through the skies above the battlefield. Each tower contains dozens of Tzichian thrall wizards who all focus their powers to rain down magical destruction upon their enemies below. The Hermetic Blades, also known as the Grand Order of Hermetic Blades, are a heretic Astartes warband dedicated to the Chaos God Tzich that was originally formed by members of the Thousand Sons Traitor Legion who were exiled by their Primarch Magnus the Red for aiding in the sorceress ritual known as the Rubric of Ahriman. They believe it is their role to guide mortal souls into the afterlife in the manner of the ancient spirits they once worshipped on their lost legion homeworld of Prospero. The warband now seeks to send mortals onto the afterlife they so relish, using the most harrowing methods they can devise. As a subset of the Thousand Sons cult of mutation, the Grand Order of the Hermetic Blades view flesh as a twisted cage that imprisons the soul. The numerous close combat warriors are charged with taking battlefield captives, who are brought back to the planet of the Sorcerers, there to be used in gruesome experiments. The Mind Eaters was a warband of the Thousand Sons led by the sorcerer Hasaphat. Hasaphat, the magister of the warband, believed he had received a vision from Tzich, the Chaos God of Change, that promised he would eventually ascend to demonhood if he completed 999 special rites that would further the Architect of Fate's plans in the mortal realm. But Tzich's schemes are rarely straightforward or completely understood, even by his most devoted servants. After almost 10,000 years of carrying out each of his appointed tasks, Hasaphat and his warband suffered a fate very different from the one that they had hoped for, but one that still pleased Tzich. The Mind Eaters have had many battles over the years, but I will cover 2 in particular worth mentioning. In 999 of M41, Hasaphat was challenged to a psychic duel with Korthufos, an exalted sorcerer of the cult of magic, after undermining his millennium-long battle plan. As the 2 locked minds in combat, it quickly became clear that Korthufos is the more powerful psyker, but Hasaphat unsheathed the Dagger of Reflections, which he had acquired centuries ago during his 87th rite. The mind flames cast out by Korthufos are drawn toward the shimmering dagger before being forced back in a thunderous wave, pulverizing the brain matter of the sorcerer. Korthufos begins to slump over with liquid oozing from his helm, But before he hits the ground, Hasaphet plunges the dagger into his opponent's chest, carving out his still beating hearts. These hearts are the trophies of his 828th rite. Later in the same year, 999 of M41, Hasaphet and his Mind-Eaters descend upon the Imperial Highworld of Mangel III amidst an ongoing Tau invasion. Before landing, Hasaphet shatters the shrouded crystal in orbit, casting its shards throughout the atmosphere to summon an impenetrable darkness which surrounds the planet. In the Valley of Sacrifice, between the battle lines of the two armies, the Mind-Eaters array the trophies acquired from their 998 preceding rites in a great crescent, and between the horns of the crescent Hasaphet mounts an enormous pyre. Without giving away any more of the story, a new demon world was created, but the results for Hasaphet were terrible and not at all what he had expected, serving as a dire warning to all those who would trust in Sietch's promises. The Sektai Prosperine are a warband born of individual Thousand Sun sects that banded together in order to reap the benefits of their combined knowledge and power. The Sektai Prosperine was originally a gathering of minor sects who came from the fringes of the Thousand Sons hierarchy. In combining their efforts, they surpassed all but the greatest of their rivals in terms of power. They now consider themselves the inheritors of Prospero's true legacy, embracing that planet's dark fate instead of running from it as others have, and believing that the destruction of their former homeworld imparted to them knowledge that would otherwise have remained hidden. The Warband of Sectoth, and now a quote from Sectoth himself. "The only lie is that there has ever been anything but chaos. The only ones who have misled you are those who sent you here to die for a cause you cannot understand. But I shall grant you a new purpose. Accept your deaths as the will of the ruinous ones, and I shall open your eyes to the true nature of this universe." The Warband of Sectoth is a large warband of Chaos Space Marines dedicated to the service of Sietch. The Warband of Sectoth is a splinter group of the Thousand Sons, which was founded and commanded by the infamous Chaos Sorcerer Sectoth, the False Whisperer, a master manipulator of the power of the Warp. This warband is active in the Calixus sector and the Screaming Vortex, one of the two massive warp storms which separate the Calixus sector from the Imperium of Man. Sectoth's warband consists of hundreds of elite warriors, Thousand Sons rubric marines, chaos sorcerers, and thousands of lesser mortal soldiers who do his bidding. When Sectoth desires the holdings of another warband, he moves decisively and quickly. He is also known for never using the same tactic twice to achieve his mysterious objectives. In the wake of his seemingly random acts of violence, Sectoth harvests what profit he can and leaves the rest to be picked clean by the scavengers of the galaxy. Often the resources expended in the warband of Sectoth's raids far outstrip what could possibly be gained. His actions are unknowable. However, Sectoth is guided by a dark resolve and is granted resources by an impossibly powerful benefactor, though to what end remains unknown. Now we come to two of my favourite and probably the most well-known Thousand Sons warbands. The Brotherhood of Dust was a powerful Chaos Space Marine warband that consisted primarily of exiled Thousand Sun sorcerers, founded by Ammon, the former captain of the 9th Fellowship of the Thousand Sons Legion. Ammon later confronted his former friend and later bitter rival, Azek Araman, in an epic sorceress duel, but was ultimately defeated. Araman then absorbed the fallen sorcerer's power, took his battle plate, and assumed the mantle of leadership over the Brotherhood of Dust as his own. Ammon once served as a tutor to the Primarch Magnus the Red, before the arrival of the Thousand Sons Legion upon the world of Prospero during the Great Crusade in the late 30th millennium. He eventually went on to become one of the 15th Legion's first Prosperine Astartes at the direct invitation of Magnus. Ammon rose through the ranks to become the captain of the Ninth Fellowship. As a potent psyker, he became the founder of the Corvidae cult and its first Magister Templi. He also served as equerry to Magnus, responsible for the Primarch's security and for carrying out certain sorceress rituals, amongst other duties. Years later, following their exile into the Eye of Terror, Ahriman began to have contempt for their Primarch Magnus. When the flesh change once again ran rampant amongst the survivors of the Thousand Sons, and Magnus seemed to simply accept it, Ahriman set out to find a cure for the rapid mutation himself. In his own hubris, and utterly unaware of the ludicrousness of attempting to use the very energy of change to stop change, Ahriman delved into the sorcerous knowledge held within the Book of Magnus. He distilled the collections of formula, incantations and rites which Ahriman then devised into the rubric, a mighty arcane spell that would ultimately undo all the woe that had befallen his battle brothers and protect them from the flesh change for all eternity. Gathering in a circle around Ahriman, a cabal of sorcerers, including Ammon, lent their power to Ahriman, who then unleashed the power of his terrible spell. By most measures, the spell failed to achieve its goal, and Ahriman, along with his cabal, including Ammon, were exiled. But Ammon was determined to find all the secrets of the rubric, and perhaps restore some of his mindless, undead brothers back to life. Over the next 1,000 years, he continued to amass more power. Ammon founded his own powerful warband known as the Brotherhood of Dust, which consisted of many exiled Thousand Sons. He also gathered void ships, other Chaos Space Marines, hundreds of rubricae, and a number of apprentices who themselves became powerful Chaos Sorcerers in their own right. It was Ammon's intention to see the suffering of his legion ended by undoing the rubric. Yet despite all his grand schemes and designs, Ammon still needed Ahriman, for only he possessed the necessary knowledge of the rubric. Ammon sent out emissaries and spies across the galaxy to chase rumors of the possible whereabouts of his former brother Ahriman. During his quest, Ammon came across many other former members of the Thousand Sons. He sent his emissaries to his former brothers in the hopes of enticing them to join his warband. If they accepted, they would become a part of the Brotherhood of Dust. However, those that refused faced execution. Eventually, Ahriman was discovered and captured by the Brotherhood of Dust. In an epic confrontation, Ammon unleashed a powerful psychic attack against his former brother. During the duel, Ahriman revealed the final secret of the rubric to his former brother. The rubric was a part of all Thousand Sons, bound into their very beings. The rubric ran through them all, linking them, sustaining them. Its power was in Ahriman's hands. Unable to pull his mind away from Ahriman, the Chaos Sorcerer caused Ammon to spontaneously combust from the powerful psychic energy unleashed from the arcane spell. Ammon's armor came apart, each component pulling away from the other, spilling grey dust into the wind. The vortex of warp power enveloped Ahriman and lifted him into the air, the separate pieces of Ammon's armor aligning itself over his unarmored body. Then one plate at a time, they slid into place over Ahriman's flesh. Finally, Ammon's horned helmet slipped over Ahriman's skull. The undead rubricae simply waited for his command. Raising his hands, Ahriman summoned warp flames from the floor, which scoured the red lacquer from their armor. Then the flames flickered blue, and their armor became polished sapphire. Ahriman assumed the mantle of leadership of the Brotherhood of Dust, including its massive fleet and army of followers. Despite differing accounts, according to the Ahriman Omnibus by John French, most of the Brotherhood of Dust was merged with the other forces under Ahriman's control. I would like to read a passage from the Ahriman Omnibus. Many of Ammon's assembled fleet had transferred their loyalty to Ahriman. Some had not. A handful of renegades and mongrel warbands had answered his call for fealty with cannon fire. Others had fled. Ahriman had sent one order: run them down. Of such necessities are monsters made, he thought. But it was necessary. There would be blood and ruin before the end of the path they now walked. It was unfortunate, a waste, but one that they would recover from. Most of the warbands drawn to Ammon's flame had seen little issue with transferring their loyalty to one lord or another. Ahriman curled his lip. Of the 1,000 sons, only 2 groups had refused to bend their knees to him. Kelitiades, lord of an order of sorcerers from 6 legions, had run before any other. The second circle had not fired, but had not responded to Ahriman's call, and had taken 24 of his brothers beyond his reach. He had let them go, ordering the hunters to different targets. Thus did Azek Ahriman defeat Ammon and take over leadership of the Brotherhood of Dust, combining them with his pre-existing warband, the Prodigal Sons. The final warband I'm going to talk about is the Prodigal Sons. The Prodigal Sons are made up of a cabal of powerful chaos sorcerers who have chosen to follow the sorcerer Azek Ahriman out of their desire to seek out knowledge from Tzeentch and to gain some of his power for themselves. Unlike Magnus the Red, Ahriman will never allow one of his own prodigal sons to cast him aside and steal his knowledge, for there is no Book of Ahriman to be stolen from him, as Ahriman once stole the Book of Magnus from his Primarch. Ahriman and his prodigal sons have turned their attention to the Eldari, determined in the belief that the lost knowledge of chaos which Ahriman seeks can only be found in the halls of enlightenment, the vast repository of arcana referred to as the Black Library of Chaos. One notable campaign was the raid on the Harlequins' library world of Arcadia in the later years of M41. Using their sorcerer's powers, the Prodigal Sons battled both the Harlequins and the Space Marines of the Bloodravens chapter. Ahriman had come to the planet to plunder the Arcadium Librarium in order to gain access to the Webway, so that he could achieve his ultimate goal of finding the Black Library and claiming the secrets of chaos which are hidden within. Even though Ahriman was able to steal several texts from the library and successfully gained access to the Webway, he ultimately failed to achieve his objective, as the Harlequins deceived the sorcerer into mistaking where the Arcadian Webway gate would lead him. Ahriman and his warband are still active in the galaxy, searching for knowledge, amassing power, and spreading destruction. Those were the main warbands of the 1,000 Sons. Please leave your comments below, and thanks for watching.